In today's video, we are going to talk about posture. I get a lot of questions on this channel, but I also see a lot of people in person where posture is a really big deal, and having optimal posture can actually improve your walking, whereas on the flip side, not having that ideal posture can really inhibit your walking, cause you to fatigue faster, and in some cases could be the cause of some of your pain if you do experience pain when you're walking. So in this video, we're going to go over what are some of the kind of foundational exercises that anyone should be doing that has either spent a long time in a hospital bed or a prolonged time sitting in a wheelchair. I promise you, by incorporating some of these exercises that we're going to go through today, you will improve your posture, stop hearing people tell you to stand up taller, hopefully, and improve your walking. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset in the context of neurologic injury, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your rehab and your health, to live an overall more active, more mobile, pain-free, happier, healthier life. And all that said, let's talk about why some of you are constantly being nagged by family members to stand up taller or lift your chest or stop looking at the floor, which, side note, kind of a tangent, I do not adhere to the cue to tell people stop looking at the floor. I think it is natural for us to look down, but that is a topic for another day. If you want me to do a whole video on why I think that's a horrible cue, leave that in the comments below, and I will make a video on why I think telling people to stop looking at the floor is an absolute horrible cue. But anyway, back to today's video. The goal is to retrain the body how to stand up as tall as possible. And by stand up as tall as possible, I'm really referring to creating as much distance as possible between your thighs and your shoulders. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you're here, there's less distance. If you're here, there's more distance. And why is that so valuable? Well, when you're here, your muscles that lift your knees are not at kind of like their mechanical advantage. So when you're here, potentially, there is a little bit more of a mechanical advantage for those leg muscles to pick your legs up and bring them through without them dragging on the ground. That's why I think it's so valuable. The other reason why it's an important topic is, in many cases, when we tell ourselves to lift our chest or stand up taller or get our eyes off of the floor, there is a tendency to use all the big muscles on the back of our body and do this, which for a lot of you, what that does is it gives you the sensation that you're falling backwards, and it makes it less likely for you to incorporate that movement of distancing your shoulders from your thighs, incorporate that movement into walking because it's scary, or you get that sensation that you're falling. So that's why it's so important. Now, how do you know if that is you? Well, when you're sitting in your chair, if someone tells you to stand up taller or lift your chest, if you're sitting in a chair with a back on, if your hips slide forward, well, that means that you're probably not using the best muscles to carry that over into standing. So what do I mean by that? So if your hips are sliding forward, that means you're really using probably a lot of more like hip muscles, and you're not really extending from your lower back. So we'll get into why that's important in a little bit. But so that's one major area that if you notice your hips slide forward when you go to try and lift your chest in a wheelchair, there might be an opportunity to improve your posture by isolating more of those lower back muscles. And we're going to go into that in today's video. The other reason, and I kind of already mentioned this, that a lot of people, when you're standing, if you are asked to stand up taller, you just lean back. Sometimes, not all the time, it's just that there's muscles that are abnormally linking up together to allow you to perform that movement. So in many cases, people can't really isolate their low back muscles from their hip muscles, so everything just kind of extends all at once, and that might also potentially be what is throwing you backwards. So if that is you, and you try and stand up taller when you're walking, and you feel like you're getting that sensation that you're falling backward, today's a good video for you because we're going to learn how to isolate kind of more of those lower back muscles. And there's still a third class of you, and that is that you have fallen forward before. So that is a compensatory strategy. You don't want to lift your chest and have your chest in front of your feet because it gives you the sensation that you're falling forward. So you just stop learning how to isolate those muscles. In your case, it is valuable to kind of get that isolated kind of what we call lumbar extension back so that you can appropriately stand up taller when you're walking, again, to improve efficiency with your walking. Now, what I don't want this to get confused with is, are these exercises for everyone that leans forward? Well, no. What I would do is if you've had damage to your neurologic system, go back and watch videos or look at pictures of you before you had your injury, your neurologic injury, and after. If there's a difference, then yeah, these exercises may be valuable. If there's no difference and your posture looks exactly like it did before you had your MS diagnosis or your acute exacerbation or your Parkinson's diagnosis, if it looks exactly the same, or your stroke, then it's probably not something you really need to focus on. There is no such thing as perfect posture. But all that said, if you fit any of those categories and you want to improve it to maybe improve your walking, then stay tuned because that's what we're going to do when we dive into the exercises. Now, don't forget, as we've been doing a lot recently, there is a handout of all the exercises in the description below. You will find a link to get instant access to that. So if you don't want to have to keep coming back to this video to remember all of the exercises we go through, click on the link, download that free PDF, and again, you can take that with you when you go to do your exercises. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and dive into today's exercises. All right, so step one for some of you, and this probably goes for a little bit more for people that are caregivers, that are caring for people that tend to always like scoot their hips forward when they're sitting in their wheelchair, is to just get the mobility. So a lot of times when you sit, what we call in like a posterior pelvic tilt, or when you're rounded like this, it's just the muscles and our soft tissue structures just shorten, and it's really, really hard to get that what we call an anterior pelvic tilt, which is one way, kind of like an antidote to that sliding forward in the wheelchair, is learning how to anterior pelvic tilt. So a setup that I really like, especially for people that aren't yet walking, is just sitting in the wheelchair with a table or something in front to support the upper body to kind of facilitate that shoulder or that lumbar extension. So getting those shoulders back and letting the hips roll forward. So for that, I like to use these wedges. I'll put a link for these in the description below. The reason I like these is because they have some rubber on the bottom so that they don't slide. If you notice that the wheelchair cushion is sliding, take the wheelchair cushion off the chair and just practice this without the wheelchair cushion in the chair. Of course, when you're sitting, put it back in, but if you're doing therapy, maybe take the wheelchair cushion out. And then you're just kind of letting that lumbar spine, this area right here, kind of extend, just kind of getting used to that position. Now, this really does two things for people in the early stages. Is if someone is leaning back because they feel like they're falling forward, having a table in front, you're getting them used to kind of leaning forward. Or if there's someone that can't isolate those muscles in the lower back, the pressure on the elbows kind of blocks the upper body and really just helps to facilitate more of that extension right there with the wedge underneath there. Then you're just gonna hold it. All right, that's the first kind of setup. Here's another setup that I really, really like that requires kind of a tool you can buy on Amazon. Again, I'll put a link for this in the description below. But if you wanted to invest a little bit more, the wedges are a little bit cheaper. I do like this thing it's called Nada chair. And again, I will put a link in the description below. But basically it goes behind your lower back and then in front of your knees. All right, and then the really cool thing about this, and actually I had someone recently that ordered it for a patient, and then the spouse, saw how nice it was, so they ordered another one, so because she wanted one as well. But what this does is it kind of pushes your lumbar spine forward, and then these little straps come around your knees and kind of block your knees. and then it just shortens to whatever length of your femur you need in order to push those that lumbar spine forward so that you can start working on this motion, which is what we're trying to do, and avoid this motion, right? So I can't do that because my knees will come up off the ground with this thing on, but we're trying to isolate, get out of that habit of extending the hips and really work on extending that spine to get that chest pointed towards the ceiling. Again, if you're a caregiver that's working with someone, I really like the cue, like there's a flashlight coming off of your chest and you're trying to point it up towards the ceiling. So having some kind of a target outside of your body versus telling someone like lift your chest or like extend your back. Sometimes those internal cues don't work as well as having like some kind of an external target. All right. So kind of shining that light up high on the wall in front and hold it. Then from there, you can really work on some rotation and really get some dynamic movement involved without slumping back. Again, remember, sometimes that's out of fear. So when someone starts moving and they feel off balance, they might resort back to that. So with this on there, you can really keep that position and then start working on reaching outside. The other thing I really like about this is that you can strap your knees together. So there is a little buckle that goes in between your knees. That's really nice for people where the knee has a tendency to always flop out to the side. So being able to strap them together is just kind of like a nice added feature to this. And again, right now we're just working on getting the mobility. So having the actual structural ability, meaning that all the moving parts can actually get in that position, even if it is passive, what we call passive, meaning that we're kind of using tools to kind of get into that position. Very, very important. If someone doesn't have the mobility, it's hard to work on the movement. So mobility always precedes like movement as far as relearning a new skill, making sure you have adequate mobility first before you start working on that neuromuscular or that brain connection of getting that body part to move. All right, now we're going to get into the movement a little bit. So now we want to see a little bit of active movement. So same setup. I really like that wedge because it actually kind of helps your hips to roll forward a little bit. We're just going to work on that anterior pelvic tilt or just isolating that kind of lumbar section of the spine to extend. So you're going to sink back and then come up. Having the arms on something definitely helps the movement. Once you feel like you can do that, you can try and do an arm lift. So back and then try and add a little arm lift. Add that arm lift. Again, it's a little bit of active assist because you're just kind of rolling your hips down off of the wedge. So back, and then assist, lifting those arms up at the same time. All right, now I've shown this in other videos, but it has been a while, so I'm bringing it back out. But the other exercise that I really, really like is with this kind of like pelvic rocker. So you basically just sit on it. It's shaped like a dome. Your bottom kind of nestles nicely inside of it. Now, this is a little bit more of a challenge than the wedge because it's rocks in all directions. So again, I would go back to starting with your hands on something and just letting those hips rock forward and then sit them back and let them rock forward and then sit them back. Now, sometimes if you're at this level, it means you're a little bit higher level. And one other activity I really like is putting the hands back on the armrest. If you have help, having someone hold maybe if you have a weaker arm, hold it back there and work on those pelvic tilts. It just kind of sets you up for success a little bit by bringing your hands behind you. It kind of helps to keep that chest up a little bit more. And then you could just work on those pelvic tilts. All right, now this is just another variation for some of you that are a little bit higher level. And what you're going to do is just kind of stay bent over for this one. Remember, a lot of times I said that when you try and lift your chest up, you just kind of lean backwards. So for this one, we're just going to stay kind of bent over and really just work on isolating that lower back. So you're going to round the back up. You could also do this in kneeling, so on all fours. And then you're just going to kind of let that belly kind of drop a little bit. And then back up. So some of you, I know you can't get on your knees. Don't use a rolling table. You definitely want to use like a countertop, something a little bit more stable. And then you're just kind of letting that lower back kind of round curve up, or letting your belly button kind of drop towards the floor. And then back up. And then back down. Try not to let your knees lock out on this one. And then back up. And then back down. And back up. All right, now we're going to try and put it all together. So remember, we're trying to isolate, kind of lifting that chest without leaning backwards. So you're going to start against the wall. I have this little kind of like peanut shaped ball. You're just going to put it behind your back. You can also just roll up a towel. You don't need to buy anything special. You're going to roll up a towel. You want to keep your feet kind of close to the wall as much as you can. If you're putting them out, it probably just means that you don't have great balance yet. That's okay, but the goal is as much as you can trying to work those feet back. And then you're just going to work on like little chest lifts. So what you're trying to think about is you're kind of trying to like round your back over the ball a little bit without feeling like you're squeezing into that ball. So if you're pushing that towel roll back a little bit, or you get the sensation you're falling forward, it means that you're probably not isolating your lower back, and you're probably pushing a little bit too much with your legs, or using some of those hip muscles a little bit too much. So again, you're just going to round and then kind of just little arch. It's a small movement, kind of over the top of that ball and then over the top of that roll, kind of arching over it, round and then over it. If you feel like there's a lot of pressure on the fronts of your feet, just move your feet out a little bit. That'll kind of stop that. And then eventually you'll be able to move your feet back a little bit. But yeah, you don't want to feel like you're kind of like all your weight's on the front of your feet. So you want to kind of feel like there's even pressure throughout your feet. And then round and then back up and round and back up. All right, but now comes the challenge. Can you walk and still isolate that movement without feeling like every time you try and walk and you think about lifting your chest up, it throws you backwards, right? So if I try and lift my chest, but I'm just like extending my hips, I'm going to feel like I'm back on my heels. Can you combine it together with that motion of that anterior pelvic tilt when you're walking? So then we go through the same progression that I go through a lot when we work on walking, or what I consider like pre-gait activities. You want to see if you can maintain that position, and can you unload your stronger leg? So can you load your weaker leg and maintain that position without flexing forward, right? A lot of times I do think that is just weakness around the hip. There's a variety of reasons, but more often than not, it's just that someone doesn't have the capacity to kind of like get those muscles to coordinate together that keep the chest up when you load a weaker leg. So I wouldn't focus too much on why you can't do it. I would just say just practice on loading that leg without feeling like that hip's popping out the back. So you're going to keep that little bit of a tilt, right? Little bit. You can almost exaggerate it a little bit on this since that's what we're focusing on, and unloading that opposite leg. So just a weight shift, unload the opposite leg. And again, you want to keep that position, unload the opposite foot. Again, it's a little exaggerated, but that's okay. Trying to retrain the brain right now, so a little bit of over exaggeration just to get the feel for how to keep your chest up. And then same thing, you're going to load that leg and do a little step and back, trying not to let that chest drop, and do a little step and back, little step, and back. Then if you really want to challenge yourself, you can hold that position and cross across and back. Again, trying not to flex forward to get that foot across, but keeping that chest up, step across and back and across and back. All right, then if you really wanted to challenge yourself, just taking it a little bit more to the next level, you could try doing it standing on a wedge. What that's going to do is it's probably going to throw you back a little bit more. And so with that sensation of feeling like you're falling backward, can you make a correction other than this, right? So sometimes when we feel like we're falling backwards, like the easiest correction to make is just throw that chest forward so that you don't land on your bottom or even worse, hit the back of your head. Believe it or not, your brain is subconsciously making all these predictions without your consent. So it's automatically, when you feel a sensation, your brain's trying to predict what's going to happen next. So the easiest thing for your brain and your body to do is just to throw that chest forward because it's the safest. Let's just get as much weight forward as possible, and hopefully that'll prevent us from falling backwards, right? We don't consciously think about that, but can you challenge yourself? Can you put something under your foot that's going to kind of toss you backwards and do like a forward step and keep that position, right? Keep a chair in front of you for safety. But can you do that? And even if you get that sensation that you're falling backwards, can you maintain that position, keeping your chest up despite that little bit of a sensation that you're being pushed backwards? So just a forward, backward step. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Don't forget, there is a link in the description below to get a handout that has pictures and descriptions on how to do all the exercises that we went through today. I can't stress it enough or reiterate enough that there is no perfect posture. So if you're not having pain and you walk fine, these probably aren't necessary exercises for you. But if you have a gait impairment or a walking problem, incorporating some of these might be beneficial in improving your walking speed, improving your efficiency, or maybe decreasing some back pain if you have that when you're walking. Now, if you like this video and you want to see more videos like this, and you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. If you want to get exercises through the week, head on over to Instagram where we post 1 to 2 videos every week just to add a little variety to your home exercise program. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you can join our monthly gold membership. With your membership, you will get access to over 400 exercises to help you create your own home exercise program to improve your overall mobility, balance, walking, all of the above, as well as a ton of exercises to help improve arm movement if that is where your deficits kind of lie. As well as access to the exercise program, you will get access to our Discord channel where you can interact with other members throughout the week. And also I pop in there a few times a week to answer any specific questions that you might have, as well as access to our monthly lives where you can submit questions in advance and I answer those questions once every month. To learn more about that program, you can visit www.rehab-hq.com, or the link for that is in the description below. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.